if the Fed were to cut rates to help growth, as you know, we saw the unemployment numbers, the revision of the unemployment numbers were horrendous.
Hmm.
And it's funny too because when the May and June numbers came out, like 250, 60, 70,000 jobs created each month, gold went down, the stock market went up, and then quietly in August they say no, not the 400,000 or 500,000 that we thought we created. It's actually only about 78,000. I mean, it's something like that. It was a massive reduction. So you're beginning to see the economy really slow down and layoffs happen. So arguably, this is what they're going to want to do. But this adds more fuel to the inflation side, especially with M2 already at a record. M2 is taken off. So when you have this happen, more inflation without boosting productivity, because I say that to you because we see the velocity of money at all-time lows. So it's like pushing on a string. They're trying to get all this money into the system, but the economy is slowing. You can see it through the unemployment numbers. You can see it through the lack of velocity. There's a massive disconnection between the equity market and Main Street. Ultimately, this is all very positive for gold, very, very positive for gold, because you're talking about an environment where gold doesn't just go up because of the currency debasement. It goes up because almost everything else looks worse. That's just the truth of it. And you add fuel to the fire when you say, since June 1st, the institutionals, the insiders, right, the traders, they've been selling between 2 and 4 billion a week in stocks. And you have all of the insiders that are selling at a 7-to-1 clip. And you have Jeff Bezos selling 6 billion in Amazon since June 1st. You have the 3 or 4 biggest shareholders and board members of NVIDIA doing the same thing, and Buffett with 500 billion in cash. At the same time, you have the mainstream, or you have the public mainstream, mom, pa, all-time record in equities, all-time record in margin debt, all-time record in option exposure. You're talking all-time levered, risky, all in stocks greater than the great financial crisis, greater than the dot-com bubble, and the insiders are going the opposite way. Now, to your original question, so that tells me the insiders are saying, we're leaving the sinking ship right now, something's coming, and the public is the opposite, all in. But on the metal side of things, the public doesn't have much exposure at all, but what we have been seeing month over month is extraordinary in the amount of gold that's coming into this country. The people who are incredibly sophisticated know what's happening. And I want to draw an analogy to say these people typically know what's coming before the rest of us do. They are able to get the playbook. And if you look at the fact that my whole career, which will be 36 years this February, less than 1% of COMEX contracts ever stood for delivery. Now, all of the gold that's coming into COMEX, what we know of, over 100 billion since the beginning of the year, and I would argue that a whole bunch more is coming in not through COMEX. The biggest money in the world is importing gold in the United States at a level that no one has ever seen before. But more crazy than that, and I think this is a bigger indictment, and actually you got to wonder where the hell is it going and who's doing it, who's the big buyer. I think it's the Treasury, myself, or the Fed. But with all this gold coming in, less than 1% of contracts on COMEX, once they would post, like, okay, they expire August 1st, you can take cash, you can roll it forward, or you can stand for delivery. Less than 1% ever did. Just in the first 3 days of the August contract, we saw 2 million over 2,160,000 ounces of gold stand for delivery, which represented 100% of the 2,160 contracts that stood for delivery, that posted. 100% of them stood for delivery. And crazier than that, almost all of it is leaving COMEX. I think the risk of breaking of the LBMA is far greater than breaking of the COMEX, because all of this gold is now coming into the United States, it seems. And I really do believe that, I really, honest to God, believe with the passage of the Genius Act, we have entered a new monetary system, and gold will be the anchor to it. And it's not going to leave the United States. We're going to vacuum over as much as we can. It's not about tariffs, and it's not about arbitrage, like a lot of the talking heads have said all along. And I said, no, it is not. This is far more significant. So the LBMA is already showing signs of breaking. You have the guy, the LBMA, he said loco, meaning location, London and Zurich have no platinum, zero, virtually nothing, yet they're trading 3 million ounces a day of spot contracts that could be delivered. We've talked about silver. Silver has the LBMA has 155 million ounces of silver there. It's the lowest float that they've ever had in the history of the LBMA. Now, a float means the amount of silver backing the contracts. They have somewhere just shy of 750, 800 million ounces altogether, of which SLV owns 80% of it. So, I mean, it's owned by the ETFs, supposedly. That 155 million ounces, David Jensen is a man who has a Substack, and he talks about the LBMA numbers. He says they trade about 190 million ounces a day off of a 155 million ounce float. Well, what could possibly go wrong? Well, it gets even worse than that. He says that they did a survey, the LBMA and the member bullion banks did a survey a few years ago where they said, yeah, those numbers are massively understated by as much as 10 times because they only post the final settlement numbers, not all the trades throughout the day. So they're doing 10 times as many trades as just the final settlement numbers. So what he says is they're trading 1.9 billion with a B ounces of silver per day, every day, off of a 155 million ounce float. Now, if we take a step back, and it's very similar with platinum and very similar with gold, not as bad with gold, maybe worse with platinum. And when you look at what the Bank of England said earlier this year, we're a T+1 exchange. The LBMA. T is trade day Monday, +1 Tuesday. Wednesday, those bars need to be moving to you. So, Adam Taggart owns a multinational jewelry fabricating company, and you have contracts at the LBMA, so you can make your gold and silver jewelry. And okay, we need to make stuff this month, so you trade in your contract. They say, Adam, sorry, brother. I know you're expecting those bars moving to you in 3 days, but we here at the Bank of England have a shortage of manpower and trucks. It's 8-week delay. Really? That's what you get. That's what you call getting caught with your pants down. Now, there are people like Tom Luongo, and I believe he's probably onto something that Trump is trying to stick it to the Bank of England and to the Crown. And a lot of it has to do with exposing this and exposing their banks, who, if you listen to Tom's arguments, they're convincing. Bottom line is that forever, through what's called exchange for physical, it was a two-way street. Metal would go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Question is, if it's leaving COMEX, it ain't going forth, right? It came back, it ain't going forth. Mm-hmm. So if that really is the equation, if that really is the deal, then what does T plus 8 weeks mean? Does it mean we got to try in 8 weeks to get silver so we don't default? Or is it really that much demand where they don't have the ability to move your bars in a rapid fashion? That's just nonsense to me. So I don't know. I would think, if I had to guess, that you could see, and by the way, I'd like to say one other thing, and that is when the BRICS Grain Exchange was developed a year or two ago, the guy that's running it said, we produce more wheat and consume more than they do in the West, but we can't control price. It's controlled on COMEX. But with the development of this new exchange, that's going to change. They're also building the BRICS Precious Metals Exchange, and exchanges are popping up all around Singapore, St. Petersburg, Moscow, Dubai. You're going to see price setting, I think, move to the east. I think the LBMA, if I had to guess, of the three, like the Shanghai and the East, COMEX, the LBMA, to me, the one that's in the biggest amount of trouble and could really actually find themselves up a river with no paddle would be the LBMA, far more so than the COMEX. The largest short position by far, by 8 Western banks, in any commodity ever traded in the history of the COMEX is in silver. Number 2 is platinum. Number 3 is gold. So platinum and silver are literally being drained out of those exchanges, and they have a fraction of the amount of underlying metal as the amount of spot deliverable contracts that are being traded. I've been arguing since 2020 that these countries in the global south have, for the last several years, were sophisticated, coordinated, motivated, and wealthy. and we're using the suppression of the Western paper market, in fact, aiding and abetting its suppression, so they could go all around the world and pick the pockets.
Right.
Little by little from all of the exchanges and venues like the miners directly, that doesn't affect the price. Well, you're getting to that point where there's not really a whole lot left in London to pick. And you got the head of the Tokyo Metals Exchange saying there's nothing in London and in Zurich in regards to platinum, but they're trading 3 million ounces a day in deliverable contracts. What could possibly go wrong? And I think you may see that. But if you saw this stuff coming and you were worried about tariffs and you were worried, you'd bring the metal back. So I think it's deeper than that. But I think if you're going to do a new system in the West that is tied to gold as an anchor, you can't have your big banks massively short or the whole system blows up before it even gets started. So maybe that's part of it. They're bringing it back to reshort, to cover their shorts, and it ain't ever leaving again. It's never going to go back to London, I think, if President Trump has anything to say with it, would be my guess. Now, I really do believe this. I really do believe that someone got in his ear and said, we must do this because the rest of the world is draining what is available. When you have China, the largest producer of gold in the world and the second largest producer of silver in the world, flying all around Latin America, buying silver before it's even called silver out of the ground from Mexico and Peru, right. And the same thing with gold, and then sending it back to China to refine it. Well, why would the largest producer and the second largest producer of silver in the world need to do this? And it just goes to show that they see things at 3, 4, 5 steps ahead. Scarce.